Good evening, everyone. Welcome to an Oz Cyclone Chasers Cyclone video update for the nation. Today, the 14th of March 2015. My name's Chris Nitzo. This update sponsored by our major sponsor, Campbell Scientific Australia, when measurements matter. Only one cyclone to talk about in the Australian area of responsibility, but I did just want to wrap up with Tropical Cyclone Olwin at the start and also talk about Tropical Cyclone Pam at the end. But really the focus of this one is on Tropical Cyclone Nathan. It mightn't look like much at the moment. It's Category 1. It is expected to intensify probably quite rapidly over the next couple of days, expecting it to get to Category 3, possibly 4 at this stage as it tracks away to the east. It then may undergo a little bit of a weakening phase as it starts to become slow moving and then starts to push to the west. We don't know exactly when that's going to happen. It could be any time from around about Tuesday, Wednesday at the earliest, through to next weekend at the latest. Anyway, let's wrap up with Olwin. The track of Tropical Cyclone Olwin is here for all to see. You can see it developed here as a low-pressure system. It's about halfway between Indonesia and Australia. And then tracked in a southerly direction, intensified pretty rapidly here on approach to the WA coastline under fairly low levels of wind shear and a very good outflow channel on both sides, the north side and the south side of the system. It then continued to track down the coast, right along the coast. We had 180 kilometres an hour winds recorded at Learmonth, and then we had also 150 odd kilometre an hour reported at Carnarvon, and we then had lesser winds reported as we went down to Shark Bay, and eventually it weakened out to a tropical low out here near Geraldton. Alrighty, let's deal with the survivor, the cyclone that has survived all the vertical wind shear that the atmosphere could possibly throw at it for a number of days. It has survived 30 to 40 knots worth of shear, only because it had a brilliant outflow channel at the time, and they'd managed to offset the amount of vertical wind shear, but the system was just terrible looking on satellite for the past 2 days. It's finally getting rid of that shear, and as it tracks here to the east, we're expecting to see rapid intensification of the system, at least to Category 3 level. Now, there are some computer models suggesting it may get even stronger than that. Now, what is the intriguing part of this is the track. Now, I'm not going to talk about that just yet. Let's just have a look at a quick environmental analysis of the system right now. On visible imagery here, we can see the system really weakened out. It was almost just a massive low-level cloud with no convection around it earlier today. Finally, tonight, we've started to see some convection building around the system. And the key here is that we're not expecting wind shear to get rid of that convection. So far, any convection that was developing over the top of the cyclone was getting pushed out onto the peninsula, and none of it was actually staying over the top of the center of the system. Wind shear has decreased, and we're starting to see a much more uniform circulation here, and we'll start to see that convection building over the top of it. Now, the diurnal maximum for convection, that's the time period that we would normally expect to see this storm activity bubbling up really, really tall and strong. Won't be happening until another few hours, but we're already starting to see the better or more favorable environment that it's located under right now, creating an effect of allowing deeper convection to form. And if we have a look here on the latest enhanced infrared imagery, we can start to see these little red splotches popping up right over the circulation center here. So this is good news for the redevelopment of this cyclone into a significant system. The Bureau have scaled back intensity estimates back to around a mid-range Cat 3. I mean, they have scaled them back, but they haven't scaled them back to the point where they're suggesting it won't intensify, but probably only to a mid-range Cat 3 on the latest Bureau of Meteorology technical bulletin. And what we need to have a look at here, Tropical Cyclone Nathan is slowly moving eastwards, driven by strengthening westerly flow to the north. That's to do with the monsoon. It is anticipated that the westerly flow will become the dominant steering mechanism in the short term. That's why it's going to move east. Now, there's also underneath it, to the south of it, an upper level trough. Moves away, moves underneath it, helps to push it along, so it might actually become a little bit faster moving to the east. And then the upper level trough's little tentacles won't travel as far north to capture the system and track it away to Fiji or to the graveyard. And so what's going to be left there in the wake of that trough is going to be another ridge, and it looks like it could be the mother of all ridges too. So once it does start to track west, it looks like it's tracking west for a long way. But if there's anything you all know, if you've been following these updates and you've been following us now for a couple of seasons, you know how bad computer models are at predicting upper level ridges. They can predict upper level troughs, they can't predict upper level ridges very well. So whatever we say here, whatever is here expected in the forecast period, particularly this steering ridge, we need to be aware that it may not develop as forecast. Now that I've given you the disclaimer, let's have a look at what the computer models are saying. We are certainly seeing on the GFS forecast model a moderate intensity system around 980 to 990, which is a Cat 2, making landfall anywhere from around about Princess Charlotte Bay all the way down, really all the way down to southeast Queensland. So it is a situation here. Obviously, the most of the computer models are making landfall anywhere from around Cairns to around Bowen, but you need to be aware that this is going to chop and change now over the next few days quite markedly, as we're not quite sure exactly how sharp that recurve is going to be. We've got the European, which shows the recurve quite a lot sharper than the GFS, and so we have a situation here where we've got one member tipping, hitting the top of Bamaga, and we've got the lowest member hitting around about Innisfail here. So we've got a markedly different approach here in the longer term as to how sharp that recurve becomes. We even still have, though, the outlying solution where the system continues east indefinitely, and there are certainly some computer models here that some of the 50 computer models from the Euro that continue to push the system out towards the east, towards Vanuatu and the Solomons, but that is now becoming a less likely scenario. So we always look at probability scenarios. This is now becoming a far lesser probability of seeing this occur than we do of seeing this recurve, or at the very least a slowing down of the east motion and then a drift to the south, which is what some of these other model members that push it a lot further to the east do. Now, interestingly, if we take a look at the Canadian CMC computer model ensembles, we can see that the Canadian doesn't want to borrow this. It just wants the system to continual track to the east here into the far eastern Coral Sea and through Vanuatu and possibly even as far east as Fiji. So the CMC model is not interested at all in this recurve scenario, but basically every other computer model is. So for now, we're considering the European as too far an outlier to be. The Joint Typhoon Warning Centre is finally tipping that westerly shift as well, but look at this massive error margin, wowie. It goes out past 155 degrees east, and it goes all the way into the Queensland coast, so you have a massive error margin here, folks. So it could be doing that UE a lot faster, or it could be doing that UE a lot slower back towards the coast. Now, one of the key things to note here on the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre forecast, and it's not really well supported by the computer model, so this is the JTWC's gone out on a limb here. They are predicting the system to weaken out to day 5 as the high pressure system starts to develop more of a steering force on the system. They expect it to weaken and weaken quite dramatically from an 85 knot, which is around about a low to mid Cat 3, down to a 55 knot, which is a fairly low Cat 2. So they do expect a fairly sharp weakening of the system between around about the 17th and the 19th of March. As I mentioned to you, it does not appear that the computer models are on board with that scenario at this stage. Just the latest coordinates for those of you playing at home of the cyclone. It's at 13 degrees south, 146.45 degrees east. Don't pay too much attention to the central pressure or the estimated pressure here. What we can see, though, are these numbers. The current intensity value numbers are starting to increase again. They hit a all-time low for this system at 2.1. They're up to about 2.3. You need to be about 2.5 to 3 to be classified as a TC. So it's getting back to TC status. And the other thing are these numbers here are the cloud temperatures. So you can see the cloud has cooled in the vicinity of the eye and around the central parts where the convection is occurring. Not cooled sufficiently to create rapid intensification just yet. We need to see those numbers down to about -70 or -80. But at the moment, they're -33, which is a lot better than what they were earlier today, which is, -10, -15, which is really bad when we've got cloud tops that aren't that high at all, which shows fairly weak convection. Okay, track forecast. First one, the GFS forecast model has the thing whacking into the area between around Bowen and Cairns, particularly in the vicinity of Townsville to Ingham, as a Category 3 tropical cyclone. The UKMO has the system just doing a complete loop on itself very, very quickly and basically hitting the same spot it's been hitting for the past 3 days, and just whacks it in there as a Category 1, Category 2 tropical cyclone. The FIM computer model has it moving a lot further to the southeast before it starts to curve back towards the coast, which would mean that in the longer term, we would have to A, watch out for the system not actually hitting the coast, so it might track away here to the southeast, which means big surf, but B, it could also mean a track further to the southwest or west, so you could be looking at anywhere from about Townsville south to around Bundaberg on the FIM model as the favoured area of landfall. But obviously, this would be this would leave us with two scenarios. The track here a lot further to the south towards the coast, and also the track that would remain at offshore, albeit getting fairly close to the coastline to create some massive surf. Already talked about the CMC, it just has the system continuing out southeast aimlessly forever, as too does the NavGem. So those two models are quite boring, but certainly the possibility there for it to continue moving east, particularly if it tracks east very quickly in the meantime, because the whole idea is that the system, the thing that's going to track this system back to the west is going to be located over the top of basically northern Australia. And for it to come under the influence of that system, it needs to be in the vicinity of northern Australia. So if it decides to just duck off here at 20 to 30 kilometres an hour over the next 2 to 3 days, well, you can kiss it goodbye. It's not coming back from out here. But if the system can continue to track only at 10 to 20 kilometres an hour, then we're still in line with a chance here. By the time the ridge builds in over this region, we will see the system probably be able to remain in its clutches. But as I say, touch and go, it really will depend on how fast it moves over the next couple of days as to whether or not that new steering influence can take hold of the system. And with the Euro, you can see here a tropical cyclone around about Category 2 intensity, maybe getting up to Category 3 at some stage in the next few days. Looking at it, doing a fairly sharp recurve here off the coast of between Cooktown and Cairns and coming back at us. So really the two reputable computer models, the Euro and the GFS, have this system making that loop-de-loop or the U-turn and coming back towards the coast. Bureau of Meteorology's own Access G model, thanks to weatherzone.com.au for your weather graphics. You can see here that the Bureau of Meteorology's model does push the system out a lot further to the east than most of the others, and has the system more gradually turning back towards the coast. So you can see here it's now tracking southwards, and we're looking at next Sunday. So we're looking out a lot further than the other computer models. The other computer models are a lot more abrupt and rough into bringing this thing. But look at this high here. Look at it, about 1,030 hectopascals in the Tasman. There's nothing going southeast from that. No way in the world. So it will, if it did try to go southeast from that, it would be obliterated by wind shear. Absolutely obliterated. So the system here from this position will track towards the coast. And if we just take a look at the last slide, that's exactly what happens. So you've got a system here tracking towards the southeast or central Queensland coast there in the 10-day time frame. And that high ain't going anywhere anytime soon, by the looks of that computer model. As I said, you can see here the upper heights starting to drop across Queensland, which shows that there's an upper level trough. So what could happen is the system could start to weaken then as the high tries to push it west and the upper trough tries to push it southeast. We would certainly see a weakening induced from that type of scenario. Just to give you an idea there of different landfall potential scenarios here, this is the GFS forecast model at 4 p.m. Thursday. And yet the model run before that, it was 4 p.m. Sunday before it ended up hitting the coast. And once again this afternoon, 4 p.m. Thursday, it's got it hitting the coast. So you can see here the variability already. We're still looking out at least, as I said, the earliest, the absolute earliest that this will start tracking back towards the coast seems to be on computer model guidance Tuesday. And the GFS is the one that's overly aggressive in that motion to the south and then southwest. The other computer models have a much more gradual shift. And just to compare computer models here, you can also see the other thing, that this is going to be a fairly small system, possibly getting close to midget status by the looks of this. But the Euro, I digress by talking about that. We'll talk about that another time. The Euro here, we can see the system tracking pretty well right along the same spot that it's just come from. You could almost be forgiven of thinking that this is a current estimate of winds. It's actually an estimate of winds out to next Saturday night. So you can see here that the Euro has it moving a lot further to the south, a lot further to the north, I should say, not the south. And if we were to compare that with the previous Euro forecast, you can see the drift back to the west here on the previous forecast was much slower. So you can see a abrupt change here in the steering flow in the latest ECMWF compared to the previous one. So the previous one, the change was much more subtle and slow. In this one, the change is much more rapid, and we see an almost direct stop and then a backtrack in direction, which is what the UK Met model is showing as well. Finally, over to Tropical Cyclone Pam. Pam is now a fish. That means it is unlikely to affect a landmass directly again with its circulation centre. And if we take a look here into the forecast period, because I know we got a lot of people from places like New Zealand, particularly in that northern island. So if we need to have a look here at the future of the system, it does get uncomfortably close to New Zealand, but in the long run, it is expected to remain just offshore. But it is touch and go, and it is only out to Sunday night, Monday morning by the time this actually really affects the North Island here of New Zealand. But at this stage, it won't be a tropical cyclone, so that's what I mean by calling it a fish. It won't actually be a tropical cyclone that affects land. By the time it gets to here, it becomes an extratropical, or transitions to an extratropical cyclone. Still, by all means, it packs a massive wind punch, and we can see here 40 to 50 knot winds sustained, which would mean gusts of up to about 140, 150, maybe even 160 kilometres an hour in the system, which is quite intense, particularly for many parts of New Zealand, which aren't really built to withstand 160 kilometre an hour winds. They're built to withstand, 70, 80, 90 kilometre an hour winds, but 160 will test some of the houses there structurally. We'll keep an eye on this for our NZ friends over the next couple of days, because it certainly looks like it, while the centre may not hit the coast, although it gets very close there on the GFS, doesn't it? While the centre may not necessarily hit the coast, the fact is that the area, particularly in the northeastern parts of New Zealand, will receive some extremely strong winds. Righto, folks, that's us done for tonight. Tomorrow night's update will focus wholly and solely on Tropical Cyclone Nathan. It'll be much shorter than this one, much shorter than the one so far that have been focusing on 3 different cyclones. And we'll have an in-depth subscriber video on Tropical Cyclone Nathan tomorrow morning for our website subscribers. To become a subscriber, www.ozcyclonechasers.com.au/subscribe. We'll have another chat tomorrow night.